Okay, I think we're good to go. Mayor Barkley? Okay, good morning, everyone. I guess this is day 2 of our budget deliberations. We are going to get started with the capital budget side of things this morning. I guess I need to turn this on. This isn't working, Juanita. Oh, you have to put it into presentation mode, I think. No, it's not working. On the bottom, see where it says notes? Well, you can't see it now because it's covering up. Hit the 4th button. Yeah, one more. No, one more. The next one. Yeah, hit that one. At the top, hit display settings and swap. There we go. Okay. Okay, so that was the video of our 2023 capital project stuff that will be soon releasing out to the public. So we thought we wanted to show it to you guys first so you can have a look. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have a quick chat about is our financial reserves policy. Now, I do apologize that this hasn't come to you before today. I will admit I was just too busy finishing up the budget. But we are doing a pretty comprehensive review and update to our reserves. This morning you were given a reserve continuity sheet. Thank you. And what this sheet is, it's just showing you which reserves are being rolled up into other reserves. We are paring down and kind of simplifying our reserves listing into the following categories. So we will still maintain our contingency in our utility stabilization reserve. General capital will stay the same. The infrastructure capital lifecycle reserve will be combined of the reserves listing beside it. So the emergency management, campground, recreation and culture, curling rink, arena, pool, ball diamonds, playground, trails and pathways, skate park, tournament building, library, and Centennial Park. Utility capital is being funded from the storm sewer, wastewater, water system, waste transfer, and solid waste. The infrastructure capital replacement is a newer reserve. That is the facility reserve, so we're leaving that the same. That is intended for the payment of that future debt of the aquatic center or a different type of facility, what that looks like. The fleet capital reserve is being combined by fire services, by-law mobile equipment, public works equipment, snow, rail, community bus, handy van, and parks equipment. And then we'll maintain the utility fleet capital from the utilities equipment reserve. And then we do have some restricted reserves that will be maintaining themselves, such as the land acquisition and servicing reserve, the in lieu reserves, offsite levy, joint use, the cemetery perpetual care, as well as the RCMP. So we're doing this just to simplify our reserve listings. We did have about 35 plus reserves, and that's a lot to manage. We thought the simplicity, bringing it down, will give us more freedom to use those reserves as we see fit. The one big thing that we're going to do as well, if you want to pull up the reserves policy sheet there. So the big thing is this example at the bottom that we're going to be providing. So the reserve descriptions, each of these reserves will be listed in the Schedule A that will be attached to the policy. And they'll each have these items. So the type of reserve, the reserve name, the purpose of the reserve, the source of funding, the optimal balance if appropriate, and that optimal balance will be linked directly to our 10-year capital plan. the application and the interest treatment. So that just gives us better clarity and guidance on what these reserves are going to look like and what we can use them for and where they're funded and things like that. Does anyone have any questions on that right now? Yep. So yeah, we do want to outline the Town of Innisfal's policy establishing standards and guidelines for the management of existing reserves and the establishment of new reserves, to outline the purpose of each reserves and parameters regarding the use of reserves. So what this means is that there'll be some guidelines about how much money we have to put in these reserves and why we're saving them, right? We're not just saving to save, we're saving for our capital plan. And they will be 2 documents that will be linked together that we'll be bringing to you every year at budget time, likely to update those optimal balances as it links to that capital plan every year going forward. So that is why your reserves look a little bit different. The reserve sheet looks a little bit different in your budget binder. I will be trying to bring this to you on December 4th for you guys to look at AMP, just to review the reserves policy in its entirety. Is there any questions on that? Is that a good, you guys are happy with the way that's kind of looking? And okay. So we'll actually get started into the actual capital projects. Okay. So the first one is the town office windows. So the town east and west window replacement, so that's not in this newer side of the building, it is in the older section that did not get updated when we did the town office renovation about 5 or 6 years ago. So the seals are failing and windows are no longer efficient, and so the cost of that is $50,000, and it is to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. Okay, so the next one, it's not just the town office committee room renovation. We did decide to do 2 different sets of renovations. So that we're creating the committee room in the back into 2 office spaces, as well as adding in a wall in the CAO's office to create an additional office space as well. This is a high priority as there is no space for a planned new hire, economic development officer, or any additional office space at this moment. So we are kind of bursting at the seams right now. So the construction of the divided wall is $20,000 in the back committee room, and I will say that the construction of the wall in the CAO's office is only $10,000, not $20,000. So for a total cost of $30,000. And again, this is an extremely high priority as we are out of room in this office for any new staff coming. And that is to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So alarm upgrades is the next one. So we are doing alarm system upgrades to the town office, arena, pool, camp house, and park shops. So upgrade is needed to allow for adequate reporting from the facility to the monitoring station. There are numerous false callouts about the facility not being armed when they are, just not being reported. So this upgraded system will be 5G and allow for future upgrades like fob access to all other facilities on 5G. And the cost of that is $38,000, and that is to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. And this is a high priority as existing system is failing at its current 3G cellular network. And so this will upgrade to the 5G. So the next project is fire hall sanitary venting. So there is a strong offensive smell in the lower level bathrooms. So sanitary waste and vent piping issues need to be addressed. There is a potential for major plumbing repairs. So the cost of that is currently sitting at $10,000. While we still maintain and we are still looking at a way to rectify this even right now, just as it is quite a disruption in the office there. So encryption capable radios for the peace officers. So our community peace officers will now have access to the RCMP radio channels. They have previously had to go through a third party or 911 system to access this. And our current radios don't meet the encryption requirements to support these new channels. So we do have to provide them with new radios, and the cost of that is $15,000 to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle. So the next one is A Hearst combination extrication tool. So this is a replacement of a Homatro tool on Rescue 9-1 with a single combination hydraulic tool. So this is a cost of $22,000 funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle. And the hydraulic tool has a higher IP ingress, water resistance, than the current hydraulic tools that we have right now. So we are looking at upgrading our operations yard electrical upgrades. So this is per our building condition assessments that were completed last year. This is a medium priority as it has reached its end of life and should be replaced to prevent any future failures. The cost of this is $35,000 to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle. So the next project is a sanitary force main on 42nd Avenue and 51st Street. So it's a 155 millimeter DI sanitary force main that connects Johns Manville Lift Station to the Sunterra Lift Station. It has to be replaced due to its deteriorated condition. In 2022, a small section was replaced south of the rail crossing on 42nd Avenue. At that time, a condition assessment was completed, which found a large amount of pitting showing up, raising concerns for possible future breaks. So this is a high priority due to the high deterioration of the pipe. The cost of this is $1 million, and it's funded by the Utility Capital Reserve. Okay, so we do have a 2024 surface improvement project as well. So this is $1,520,000, and it is funded from grant funding. So LGFF, we are estimating at $1.2 million this year, and CCBF at 300. It's pulling 320 from CCBF. And the different projects that we're doing is this. So we're doing 46th Avenue paving between 48th Street and 46th Street. Infrastructure replacements were completed in 2023, and the budget for that portion is $170,000. 45th Street closed, paving from 54th Avenue. The infrastructure replacements were completed in 2023, and the budget for that is $130,000. 46th Street mill and overlay between 45th Avenue and 48th Avenue. It's identified as a high priority in the 2022 road assessment, and the budget for that is $500,000. So 39th Street Crescent sidewalk and catch basin repairs, identified as a high priority in the 2022 road assessment. The budget for that is $200,000. 40th Avenue mill and overlay, it was identified as a high priority in the 2022 road assessment, and the budget for that portion is $300,000. A replacement of paved lanes in various areas. Priorities will be based on the lane assessment completed in 2021, and the budget for that section is $180,000. Trail replacement along the north side of Napoleon Sports Field. The budget is $40,000 for that project. The design and tender will be completed in the winter of 2023 with construction during the summer of 2024. And we did add a map of all the different capital projects. So you can see the road and infrastructure projects, just so that you are aware and you can see where it is. So we did add the Highway 54 pedestrian crossing. So in March of 2022, an intersection in-service safety review was completed at the intersection of Highway 54 and 42nd Street. The recommendations for pedestrian accommodation included reducing the speed limit along Highway 54 to 70 kilometers an hour and installation of an overhead flashing beacon system. This would not be warranted until the completion of a pathway along 42nd Street from Highway 54 to 60th Avenue. With the completion of the pathway in 2023, the next steps will be to apply for a speed reduction along Highway 54 and the installation of the pedestrian crossing. The cost for that is estimated to be $175,000 to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. Okay, so the next project is the development of our solar farm. We have been working on the early engineering now this year. So this is the development of a 2 megawatt solar farm. It's proposed on Lot 1, PUL Block 71 and Plan 2322-310. The PUL is 9.62 acres and located adjacent to 61st Ave and 35th Street. The project would include a feasibility, preliminary design and study, AUC submission and approval, detailed design and studies, procurement, contract administration, construction, and commissioning. The cost is estimated to be $4 million. However, this would have to be a debenture. We would be taking out a loan to complete this project. So the revenue approximation that we did do some work on this, we worked very closely with Fortis to determine what our revenue projection is going to be. So they did give us two options. They did a 30-day average and a 365-day average. So for every 1 megawatt of generation, a solar generator will produce approximately 2,100 megawatts of power. So, and as of May 17th, 2023, which is when this revenue approximation was completed, the 30-day average would generate approximately $608,000 a year in revenue for us, where the 365-day average would generate $659,000 in revenue. So even with taking the smaller revenue, with the loan amount, the annual payment being $519,499, we are still going to see a net revenue for the first 10 years of $88,860. That equates to almost 1 full % of a tax increase for us. And once the 10-year term is paid off, we would completely realize that entirety of the revenue in our budget for us.
Director Vickers, may I ask, looking at the revenue projections, were they using forward prices or looking back? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what was that question?
Were they looking at forward prices or back?
So they look backwards a year.
Okay.
So they do retroactively a year because it's hard for them to look forward.
Okay.
Along that same, is the interest estimated to be what it is today?
So the interest that we used in this calculation is what it is today, because when we eventually apply for it, this is likely 6 to 8 months away potentially.
Thank you.
We don't know what the interest will be at that point. It could change these numbers. This is just kind of an estimate based on today's numbers. Okay. We'll move on to the Reservoir 3 radiant heater replacement. So this is the replacement of radiant tube heaters as identified in the building condition assessments. This is a high priority as some firing sections have a high amount of rust and scaling that is not evident on other components in the space, likely a result of being located in a pump room with high levels of humidity. The cost for that is $30,000 and it's funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So the next one is the Parks Shop water heater replacement. Replace the domestic water heater as current tank is in poor condition as per building condition assessment. This is a medium priority as items have reached their end of life and should be replaced to prevent failures. The cost for this is $20,000 to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So we do have the Park Shop radiant heater replacement as well. So replacement of the radiant tube heaters, north and south bays as per the building condition assessment. This is a high priority as main source of heat for facility is rated in poor condition. The cost of this is $70,000 to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So the next one is a makeup air unit replacement. So the replacement of a makeup air unit for shop area as building condition assessment. This is a medium priority as air unit is in poor condition and not sure how often the unit is in use. This is for the Parks Shop. So this has a cost of $45,000 to be funded by the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So the next item is a wheeled skid steer. So it's Unit 35. A skid steer is a unit that has become high in maintenance and in hours, and it will be sold once a new unit is purchased. So a new unit will be a wheeled skid steer, which will provide a more multi-purpose use. It is a high priority to reduce maintenance costs and maintain service levels. The cost of this is $100,000 and being funded by the Fleet Reserve. Okay, so we do have 6 standard half-ton quad cab 4x4 trucks included in this budget. This is a high priority to reduce maintenance costs and maintain service levels. So we are going to have 5 units in one RFP to put out for $360,000 with 1 unit in a separate RFP for $85,000 for a total truck purchase project cost of $445,000. So the trucks that we intend to replace The first one is Unit 28, so it's a current 2023 Public Works pickup truck. It has 266,000 kilometers on it. From 2011, when we started tracking repair costs, we repaired the driver floor due to it had rusted out and could see the road. The transmission was replaced in 2014 and engine work done due to oil leaks in 2016, as well as the normal repairs, water pump, tires, front end work, etc. Due to its age, it's getting harder to find parts for the unit. We have put in around $19,000 in parts and around $11,000 in labor, so the total is around $30,000. The next unit is 281. It's a 2005 Parks pickup truck with just over 263,000 kilometers on it. Again, in 2011 is when we started tracking repair costs. We repaired the driver floor due to it had rusted out completely to the point you can see the road. It had lots of minor repairs that have come with due to age of the unit, water pump, AC work, tires, brakes, dash has been replaced. But due to its age, it is getting harder to find parts for it. We have put in around $10,000 in parts over that time and around $8,000 in labor. So the total is around $18,000. Unit 306 is a 2007 utilities pickup truck. It has just over 232,000 kilometers on it. This is the only diesel unit in the town fleet that is a daily unit. These units are not great units to be idling lots, so that I can see some major engine work coming soon. We have put $15,000 in parts and another $10,000 in labor, so the total cost to date in maintenance is $25,000. So Unit 401 is another vehicle that is looking to be replaced. It's a 2007 facilities pickup truck. It has just over 266,000 kilometers on it. So the transfer case was replaced in 2012. The engine was rebuilt in 2019. The transmission was replaced in 2021, as well as the rear springs, as one side has a broken spring over this time. Going forward, they can see problems coming up with the engine, as this model of engine is known for having issues. They have put in over $20,000 in parts and another $11,000 in labor, so the total is around $31,000. So the next one is Unit 103. It's a 2014 Protective Services pickup truck. It only has 113,000 kilometers on it. The unit is a 2014 Ford F-150 that has been set up as a police unit. We started working on that unit early in 2015 and have put in around $7,000 in repairs and services. There's been a lot of extra work done on this unit through Megatech to fix many problems that it has had with lights and speed camera. The body of the truck is in very good shape with fairly low mileage on the unit and no major issues that have come up with it. We do recommend keeping this unit as a backup for the summer student. Unit 705 is a 2015 Fire Chief Command truck with just over 240,000 kilometers on it. This unit was an old county unit that was given to the town of Innisfil for use as a fire chief unit. We started looking after the vehicle in 2017 and have put around $15,500 in repairs and service. We have done some major work on the engine and done some exhaust updates to make it run better over the time. The body is still in good shape, however. So those are our pickup trucks. Okay, so the next one is a water truck that we'll be replacing. So it is Unit 284. It's a 1997 GMC 3-ton water truck, which has been modified from a gravel truck to a water truck, and it's used across all departments. The unit has become high in maintenance and in hours. We'll sell once a new unit is purchased, and we will be replacing with a used water truck unit, but no older than 2021. The cost is $100,000 to be funded from the fleet reserve. Side by side, Unit 288 is a 2009 620 John Deere Gator side by side. This unit has been having regular breakdowns and has become unreliable. We will sell once the new unit is purchased, replacing with a new unit of the same size. This is a high priority to reduce maintenance cost and maintain service levels. The cost of this unit is $18,000 to be funded by the fleet reserve.
So, Director Vickers, back to the conversation yesterday. I'm curious if you and your team feel, would it be beneficial to look at leasing and do a cost analysis of purchase versus lease? And I'm assuming that maybe it's not ideal to run vehicles to 240,000 kilometers, maybe, I don't know, maybe more 150-ish, or just because of the use that with the town of Innisfail and,
Absolutely. So Mayor Barkley, we did discuss that a little
Okay.
bit last night. We haven't had a chance to
Yeah,
really
of
delve too
course.
much
Yeah.
into it. However, we do want to be on a 15-year cycle for these trucks. And likely leasing, you have to replace every 5 or 6 years.
okay,
And then we would always be having lease payments. So we will definitely look into it a little bit further.
okay.
Would you like us to look in before this project is approved?
I don't know, you could maybe ask about one vehicle and see what that is, that less work or something, but maybe there's a deal if you have 6, but I don't know, is that prudent to run vehicles for 15 years? Or,
I use that off of a couple scenarios for other municipalities that they use. Again, those are the same municipalities I talked to yesterday about, or the other day about leasing, that they don't lease. So I don't have a lot of good background on leasing and how that affects how we can incorporate those. So yeah, I could reach out to a dealership and just see what an option would be. Yep.
Mayor Barkley, I think that's for the director's comments. So get through today, if you want to just kind of park the trucks and give feedback as you like. Put into motion some evaluation. We expect the budget to come future based on your comfort with the budget, likely in December. That's usually the time frame. So it gives us a little bit of time, but understand this is on the docket. There's an urgency been identified, but we can do that background research on leasing.
yeah, no, and I trust your expertise, and I'm just curious, right? Just throwing it out there.
So the question I would have is, I assume when we get that resolved, we would try to do a mass buy, seeing as we've got all these, and perhaps drive better pricing. And then the other question around leasing, would there be information available via the procurement guidelines that we have to follow with municipal? Like perhaps they would have experience that almost nobody's leasing, or everybody is doing this or that or the other thing. I wonder if would their guidelines, do they have guidelines for leasing versus purchasing? Those.
I don't believe so, Councillor. I think it's subject to procurement to the TILMA and the 200,000 or 75,000, so still subject to same standard of procurement.
And a personal guess is that our style of keeping stuff, it probably is advantageous to purchase, but that's just a guess. I don't know.
And we did intend to do only 2 RFPs, so we would do 1 RFP for the protective services truck, as that is kind of a separate kind of issue, and the rest of the trucks would be included in 1 RFP to try and get the most economical price for us, as in a bulk buy.
Can I ask why the protective services truck is that different?
Yep, sure. But yeah, there is some different standards that the protective services truck needs in regards to the electrical. So there was, we did some research, and I know Gary did some research in regards to an RFPs. So they did have some specific specifications in there. So we did want to have that one separated out just to make sure that we hit those specific items for that unit. The other units, what we've tried to do last year or this year in regards to our assistant chief is purchasing a standard vehicle so that it's standardized with all of our units. Becomes a lot easier for us to do like a bulk purchase, for instance, this year of doing 6 units, all the same. The packaging, we always do ourselves anyway. We end up putting the lights on. We put the decaling, stuff like that in-house anyway. So we found it no advantage to put it into the RFP for them to do it, since we were doing that probably a lot more efficiently anyway. So.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the snow blade attachment. So Unit 31D HAL is a snow blade attachment for the Bobcat. It is highly used during the winter for parking lot, snow plowing and cleanup behind the grader on roadways. So this unit does get replaced every 3 to 4 years, so it is due this year or in 2024. It is a high priority for cleanup during snow removal with a cost of $15,000 to be funded by the Fleet Reserve. So we are looking at purchasing some new floor cleaning machines. So we are looking to purchase 2 new floor machines, one at the LLC and one at the arena. The old ones will be kept at the rink for the end of season cleaning. This is a high priority as machines are reaching the end of life and should be replaced per custodial standards. So the cost of this is $25,000 to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So we did talk a little bit about this yesterday. We are looking to do a construction of 4 units in Napoleon Meadows. Housing is a key priority within this project, key council priority, and with this project identified in the 2024 Housing Action Plan. So the cost is approximately $1.5 million, and this will be funded by the land department. So we saw that in the operating budget that there was a transfer to the capital budget of $1.5 million. Now, yesterday, there was some questions asked about the revenue generating on the current 4 houses that we built this past year. Now, when we look at total cost, which includes the lot cost as well as any realtor and other charges, we are looking at just over $1.7 million as a cost to build the 4 houses. And the revenue that was generated on those houses was $1,874,800 for a net revenue generated of $168,670. So it was quite successful from our point of view.
Can I ask what costs we use for the lots? Because
Yeah, so we used the lots that our auditors had determined for the cost, which was around $79,000 for the total lots.
Yeah.
I think it was just under $69,000. Yeah.
Because what drove that is they weren't selling.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And we were willing to sell those at a much cheaper rate if we needed to. So the fact that we were able to incorporate the full cost of the lots and still maintain some revenue generation. Okay, is there any more questions on that? We don't know what the houses are gonna look like, if they're duplexes, if they're single-family houses, if it's a row housing. We will develop a tender and come back to council for the design work of that at a later time, but likely fairly quickly, because we want to get that tendered out so we can start building probably in the summertime, so we want to start that fairly quickly. So another area.
I do have one comment on the houses. Have we determined the style or the general style or what their intended buyer is at all?
Not at this point, and my concept for the RFP is that we won't be as specific as we were in this previous one. We'll be looking more for a builder partner that could work with us over the next series of years to do sort of single family and small scale multifamily would be what we would be focusing on. And then hopefully work with them to talk about floor plans and talk about that target. In my mind, we would be looking towards some sort of a bungalow type of product for Napoleon Meadows. And then, yeah, whether that's, detached is gonna be the easier way to go, but we'll have the conversation of whether there's opportunity, just based on how it's lotted, if there's something else there.
And we don't need to do them all the same.
No, and
Yeah.
the one thing I think we'd had previous discussions about slab and basement and stuff like that. And the one thing that I think is a factor, because I think I heard there wasn't a big difference in cost if you put a basement in or not. But if you do or don't, it's a big factor when it comes to steps. Even the ones over in across the highway, when they built the duplexes, they put basements in, and so then there's 5, 6 steps.
Up the front.
And if you don't, that is, unless the terrain is just right. So that is one to keep in the back of our minds, I think, that you can have good intentions and say, oh, well, this is same price, so let's have the storage. But if our intention, I say our, is to get to the senior population with that home, it probably shouldn't have steps, so we need to keep that in mind.
And I hope through the RFP that we're able to, identify one or two builders and then be able to work a little bit more hands-on on having those conversations about price and marketability and, again, wanting to get into a price point that council's comfortable with as well.
Thank you.
So another priority that came out of the housing study is the development of the Southwest residential design. So we are looking at doing a detailed engineering design for the Southwest residential development. It is a high priority as per the Housing Action Plan. So this will be the engineering and surveying of this property. It is going to cost $150,000 to be funded from the Land Acquisition Reserve. Okay, so LLC on-demand hot water tank. So the hot water tank replacement, as tank is reaching the end of lifespan as per facility condition assessment, and we are looking at replacing it with an on-demand unit. The cost of this is only $10,000 to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So the curling rink mechanical slab repair. So the repair of the slab on the grade in mechanical room at the curling rink. This is a high priority as water will flow into the mechanical room at certain times of the year. So this does cost $10,000 and to be funded from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. So we are also looking to upgrade the arena sound system. So the arena sound system is causing issues with balanced sound and enough sound, and parts are now being outdated. So user group complaints are increasing and experiencing more frequent issues with the system. The cost of this is $125,000, and we are funding it from the Infrastructure Capital Lifecycle Reserve. Okay, and so the last one is the arena lobby flooring and partition replacement. So to supply and install flooring in lobby bathrooms, the flooring is past, in lobby and in the bathroom, the flooring is past its useful life, as well as the supply and installation of metal partitions in the men's and ladies' bathrooms. So the flooring cost is $130,000, and the petitions costing is $40,000 for a total cost of $170,000. And this is to be funded by CCBF, or formerly known as the Federal Tax Grant. Okay, our projected reserve balance for 2024, after all these projects come out, is $12,093,353. So we are putting $1,850,847 into reserves for 2024, but we are pulling out $2,560,095 in 2024 to offset the capital projects. So what do we have reserves for? So we do have reserves to maintain and improve Innisfil's working capital requirements, provide for future funding requirements, and provide stabilization for fluctuations in operating and all capital activities. All reserve transactions are approved by council via the annual budget process, year-end approval processes, or specific council resolutions. Administration is actually not allowed to touch reserves without the specific approval of council through some form of resolution each year. So our reserve history, we do like to just kind of show our reserve balance. This is as per budget, so not actuals. So we can see that we have always hovered right around that over 10 million, anywhere from 11 to that 14 million kind of thing. We are sitting on that lower end of the scale this year, however. And that's it for the capital projects. What would you like? Would you like to go back over the projects in greater detail and ask more questions?
I do have a couple other questions that I kind of was making notes, and then we got to the vehicles and
Yep.
dialogue started. Is it okay if I just?
Yeah.
Okay, so the forced main, the question I would have there would be, would it be replaced in kind or whatever we replace it with to try to avoid the pitting? Well, it's being replaced because of corrosion, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll be replacing it with high-density HDPE pipe, so likely it'll be, majority of it will be a pipe burst. So utilizing existing alignment, running a plug through and then breaking it out with a high-density, thick-walled PVC so that it'll eliminate that pitting for future.
Okay. And it almost seems, but I've been genuine in the request, it almost seems political in today's climate, but as we look at the radiant heaters and the water tanks, is there any alternate to natural gas that has been identified?
I guess we haven't explored the alternate to natural gas. They've all been gas-fired, but we can certainly evaluate that when we go out for the quotes.
Okay. And the specific radiant heater in the reservoir, which high humidity corrosion, is there a better type of heater other than a radiant heater that might not have
Again,
this?
yeah, we can take the input from the contractors for sure.
Okay. Yep, good. As long as we ask those questions, I'll be happy.
So, Director Vickers, I'm curious, the pedestrian crossing on Highway 54 and 42nd, would there be any discussion, I guess, provincially, like about traffic circles? I only ask that because I see them going in everywhere, like I see them in Penhold, of course at Springbrook, south of Olds. So,
So typically, transportation does have you assess feasibility for traffic circles.
Okay.
This wasn't done but we're going off the recommendation that actually they had for us, done by their consultant. So I think that maybe a bit was evaluated at that time. I have to look into it. But the recommendation for the crosswalk was based on their consultant's recommendation.
okay, yeah, I just seem to be putting a lot of traffic circles in a lot of places, and I don't even know how it would work there with the length of loads that are coming out of the industrial park at times, but,
When Bella Vista was first approved, the right-of-way was secured that would allow for a traffic
Okay.
circle, so they, but I think at this point, because traffic volumes, it's more the pedestrian volumes that are allowing us to do
Okay.
the crosswalk as opposed to intersection changes.
so if they did that at some point, is that their cost, or is that,
That comes up when it comes up.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Could be our cost, is what you're saying, okay. And just back to the solar project for a moment, I'm wondering if you could ask Fortis about forward-looking. I mean, they would have that information without question, and
I know in dealing or working with Twyla with Ford, it's typically, yeah, they don't like giving us projected costs because they don't like predicting, but
They
they
definitely
definitely
wouldn't
pass.
guarantee it
but
either.
I don't know that's predicting. I think you can look at forward contracts and see where that price is 3 months, 6 months out, and give you an idea of a trend at least, and, you know, have we predicted this in the last year where prices are extremely high, and,
We'll definitely reach out to Fortis and see if
Yeah.
they can have some sort of future prediction.
yeah, I know that, like, the power market's so complex, and I don't understand it for sure, but just, I mean, it looks great. And,
The numbers look good right now,
They
yes,
do,
that
yeah.
the numbers, the revenue projection overextends to what the loan requirement would be, and
Yes.
still give us a bit of revenue,
Yeah.
padding our pockets, which would be nice. And then it is only a 10-year payback.
Yeah.
And then we would get to see that whole $600,000 in the budget.
Yeah, but I think when we first looked at it, the revenue was more around 400, was it? So has it jumped to 6 because of the power rates in the last year, or is that just more of a deep dive into the project itself?
Yeah, a little bit of deep dive, as well as the size. We originally were at 1.5
Okay.
to 2. Now we're at 1. We used 1.75. The design will be for a 2 megawatt.
Okay.
So really it will come down to what the final production will be as well.
Okay, perfect. And then this is tiny in the scheme of things, but the water heater, the $20,000, is that what water heaters go for now, or is this kind of extra large because it's in the shop, or?
I'm not sure,
Well,
but those estimates come out of the building condition assessments.
Okay.
They provide those estimates, so they're
Geez, I hope I don't need a
generally,
water heater.
it is for the entire park shop, so.
And I think it was requested that we look at more on-demand heaters for all the facilities anyway, just as a way for energy savings. But we will, should they be approved in the budget, when we bring that to you for final approval for each project, then we'll give you those options at that time, right?
I will say my last residential one was 2,500, and, which isn't very big. And the predicted life is half of what it used to be, which defies all logic of how you're being kinder to the planet with a high, and mine's high efficiency.
Yeah.
But to rebuild it after half the life,
I think mine was $950 the last time I bought one, which wasn't that long ago, but anyway. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Just a couple of questions. To be honest with you, I really struggle with the idea that some painted lines and a flashing light are going to keep people safe crossing a highway. And I think that from people that I've spoken with, and then certainly comments I've observed, concerns about moving families over to Bella Vista and the really, really bad access to that community, I think will stop the builder from being able to expand it for sure. I mean, it feels like you have to wait until you kill a few people before you actually decide to address an issue and build a proper pedestrian walkover or whatever. So I certainly would say to start, a crosswalk and a light is adequate maybe, but as we look at expanding that or building out the southwest residential area, letting people want to have a walkable community and get out and move around, crossing that highway on a crosswalk just doesn't work for me. So I wanted to raise that concern. The other spot that concerns me from a lack of crosswalk attention is the intersection on Lakewood and Aspen Heights, the entrance into Aspen Heights. Directly across from the ski hill, there's lots of families in that area as well, trying to get across to access services or access things on the north side of the highway is a problem. So if we might look at a crosswalk at that intersection, that would be great. And then I don't see anything relative to any new upgrades or new playgrounds this year. So are we not doing any playground work at all? Any remediation on some of the older playgrounds? And does the Kinsman know we're not doing playgrounds?
Yeah, so in regards to the playgrounds, yes, we are putting a hold on any new playgrounds. We continue every year, we have to do our inspections. When we do the inspections, any repairs will be identified or repaired this year. There was no intent though this year to do any replacements, and we did have a conversation with the Kinsmen, so they are aware that we aren't doing any new playgrounds this year.
Councillor Maceros.
Thank you. I was just wondering, Director Vickers, do you know offhand what interest rate we're using for the $4 million loan amount for those numbers?
It was 5.2 something, 5.28, 5.26.
Okay,
That was
thank
the
you.
10-year rate today on the government's website.
Okay, thanks.
I guess, following Councillor Wing, are we to initiate any new thoughts here, or?
Absolutely.
So I don't believe it's urgent, but as we talk about the sound system in the arena, I think we should look for next year maybe at the sound system and the projection system in the LLC. I'm not sure if there's technology that would allow some kind of special light to hit that screen so you can actually read it, but anytime I'm in there and somebody brings their PowerPoint, I can't read it. And then it seems like it takes an experienced person to run the sound system so that it doesn't.
We could do high tech and put blinds on the windows that could come down.
If that's not, whatever. I think it should be
Just kind of
looked,
darken the room a
it
bit.
should be looked at because it's used for so many good presentations, and it's really hard sometimes to, and again, I'm not projecting it for this year, but let's look for
Yeah,
next
we can
time.
definitely put it on the list of stuff to explore for sure.
And I know I brought up yesterday picnic tables and stuff, and I would add to that is I don't even know how old it is, the gazebo down in the park over by the lake, and it's probably needs some paint. A few slashes in the wood, and initials engraved and all sorts of things. But
Sorry, I have one more. I do support the initial step to put the crosswalk on the 54 bypass, because I know anything else is going to be huge and will evolve. And I do think if you actually have lights and can bring cars to a stop, then children can be taught that once that car is stopped, you can cross. Whereas right now, it's pretty much a crapshoot. Thank you.
Councillor Maceros?
Thank you. Also back to Councillor Wing's comment. If the lack of a robust crossing system is preventing development in that area, what is the interest of Bella Vista to contribute to a crossing?
They would contribute as a developer to those improvements that are a result of their expansion. They had to do even some of the improvements that have happened so far with the turn lanes that go into Bella Vista. So development does pay for their requirements when they're adding traffic and adding folks to the community.
And will they contribute to a crossing or?
This pedestrian crossing, we haven't had that conversation with them, but
Berkeley, to the director, so council is seeing what administration is proposing. Do we have the listing of what's not funded?
I don't have that.
We can
We can get it.
pull it up, like, yeah.
I didn't know.
Do you want to take a 15, 20-minute break?
Sure.
And maybe
Yeah.
Dawn will
Is that-
come?
is that
I'll
okay?
come get it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. We're back on? Okay. Okay. So yeah, this list here is our unfunded projects. So what that means is they are not included in our capital, 10-year capital plan right now. So we don't have any current funding for them. So the first one being the Aquatic Center. Our portion is estimated to be approximately $10 million is what we anticipate to fund, even though the total project is $28.5 million. We also have an arena dressing room expansion that will be needed, but that is $4,074,000. The Dodds Lake parking lot is sitting at $200,000. Dodds Lake Phase 1 Park. The dog park parking lot, so this is that secondary parking lot kind of through the cemetery. Cemetery infill Phase 1 is $200,000. Future ball diamonds, we have identified a need, but we're not sure of the costing yet for that. Rec and open space master plan is at $100,000. The Hazelwood school site and access, $3.5 million. And the indoor walking track, which we know is a future need, but we're not sure where that is or what it looks like yet.
Also, council not identified is the rehabilitation of the current aquatic center. So if you move into the new aquatic center, what do we do with the old aquatic center? So there'll be a cost associated with that repurposing, if that's your desire.
No, go ahead.
I would like to see us separate the Hazelwood school site and access, because I think one will occur before the other. They may happen together, but I think one's going to be needed before the other. But
If the access is needed, then the developer would pay for it. The only way we would end up having to pay for the school site and access is if development doesn't progress quickly enough there that we have to front end it.
No, but
If Hazelwood builds out additional phases, that access would be addressed by the developers.
that seems to be different than what I've heard for the last 3 years, that we are getting near the actual number of homes in there that can be serviced by one.
That next site, the next phase, they can do the next phase and then they would have to do access, but that would be a developer.
So we're talking
cost.
on the west side, that developer, which is now for sale,
You mean on,
Malibu.
yeah,
It's all for sale.
yeah. So it's if the school divisions came forward and said, we need a school site next year, and the developer isn't doing anything, that then we're going in to front end all of that work.
I don't anticipate that happening. I anticipate the volume of houses in there pushing, the volume of residences and cars ultimately pushing for safety or whatever, that we need that second access, part of which may join into the new developer on the east side. So what I'm looking for is just to separate, even if it's an emergency access, that isn't a full-blown,
That would still be a developer cost, though, if the developer's progression
But we're gonna-
triggers it, that's
so
where
whatever that
would come
number
in.
is that it triggers it,
It's in the outline plan.
So-
It's, yeah,
Unless council feels it. to
unless
do
you
it.
want to do it in
Yeah,
advance
that's-
of what
well,
the
whatever
plans
that
have
number
been.
is, what worries me is at the rate of build in there, that we'll be right near that number for a long time. And it's, well, there's 5 new houses going in there right now. And, I mean, we got all excited about 30 houses going in down in Laybon, and there's approximately 140 in Hazelwood coming through one spot. And it's, yeah. They all go right by a certain counselor's house that has to shovel 2 sides of her sidewalk because she's on the corner. Anyway, I would like to see them separated in dollars, because I think at some point, I personally don't foresee the school site being needed for many years, but Just an opinion.
Yep, no, it's fair. I think the other challenge would be the dollars to make an assumption, I guess, would be a tough one too, because I think the assumption would be as development builds out, depending on the phase that builds out, will depend on the access that needs to be put in, as well as, like, as Everclear, as EverTrust builds, there's a potential there for an emergency, so that dollar value may be a lot less than. If that doesn't happen and the route goes north, the dollar value could be a lot more. So it'd be hard to put a value to it, but we could put a range, maybe.
From my perspective, Counselor, I think point taken, some awareness of the next access requirements. Right now, it's hard to really determine based on there has not been development on the new side. What I'm hearing is current Hazelwood, and I think what I recall of council talking was, should we run that line through based on the town investing in that? And that's what we're saying. There's two different conversations. One is development funded, which is typical, or does council wish to advance this as a potential project in the future?
I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we should take the school site, put it separate, and then have an if-then on these other, that if it doesn't involve EverTrust, or if it does involve EverTrust, because, yeah, one could be way shorter than the other, and at least have it on the books, on the list. I'm not proposing that we advance it in this budget. Absolutely not.
So what I'd suggest, then we'll tag it Hazelwood School Site and then Hazelwood Access. It's just a number right now, and it's likely not to be funded at this given time.
Good.
Well, let's talk about the big elephant at the top of the list. And, I think at some point we need to address this, and, where are we going to get our portion of the funding from, if some of it's cash and some of it's borrowed and some of it's grants? What does that look like, and when do we start doing that? Because we should have maybe been doing it 25 years ago. And just wondering what your thoughts are, Director Vickers, if you have any around this project. And I know we've got the one, like the reserve fund that we've been adding to, but my gosh, by the time we get that built up, it's going to be a long time coming.
I think the question back would be to council, are you happy with the project? I think
Okay.
the director's job is to
So
help
start
fund
there.
your
Okay.
vision, just
Okay.
for some clarity.
All right, so we'll start there then. Back up to a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. So we have this project. It's, I think we know the existing aquatic center is aging out. We've started the advocacy, the last conversation that was had. Certainly there's going to be grant money available through the provincial government. How much? Uncertain. I think made it quite clear, felt that what they're looking at is kind of a drop in the bucket, probably for what Alberta needs, but that they haven't put the funding in place yet. That is in the mandate letter, though, so they certainly said to keep in touch and will help us through that process, but no idea what that amount might be. So let's say it's 5. Maybe that's being generous, I don't know. Maybe it's 7. So I think as a council, we need to decide, are we committed to this, or kind of maybe sort of?
Right, are you committed to only receiving 5 million and us having to self-fund the balance?
Well, or even are we committed to the project period?
Yep.
Okay, because we've spent some dollars on this. We've talked about it for 4 or 5 years now, and we know we need to do something. So we need to be certain that we're doing this, or are we doing something else? Councilor Maceros?
Yeah, I'm committed. I'd like to start talking about how we're going to work towards raising this money or funding it, and what are the next steps, and is the effort of, it's going to take administration to get to this point? Is that covered in our budget? And I know it's a lot.
If it comes down to our portion's 15 million, before I can commit to it, I need to see what the tax increase is gonna be, and I need to see what the feedback is from the community. I know there's a lot of people out there, and I get text messages and stopped saying, when is it gonna happen, when is it gonna happen? And I keep telling them that we need to look at the numbers. People need to realize that cost of building has gone up substantially, and is it rational for us to consider something that's gonna cost so much money? People say, well, I would take a tax increase. Well, let me put it this way. People, families are telling me that they would take the tax increase. Retirees and seniors and that don't want it. So I have a hard time digesting how we're gonna come up with $15 million to fund our portion if we can only get 5 million from the province and then potentially 10 million from the federal government. So until I can see the numbers and what the tax rate increases would be and how long it would take us to put that together, I need to see those numbers first before I'll commit to anything.
So you have those numbers, right, Director Vickers? Like, we've seen them before. Maybe after lunch or something, we could, or sometime we could see them again.
Right now, we showed yesterday the tax implications to get to the 10 million over the next number of years to buy our debt.
Could we see 15 million, please? Or maybe
Oh, let's see.
15, 17, because I don't have much faith that our provincial government's gonna step forward with that much money considering what's been said. So if we could
Yep.
see that, then I would maybe tomorrow be able to give you a more firm stance on where I am.
So you want 15 million or even 20 million, 15 and 20 million, do two?
Okay, Councillor Bates, do you have anything to add? Or?
Well, feels like Groundhog Day. And in my case, it goes back a little further. Yeah, I think like Councillor Dunham, I'd like to see that. I think there's been so much effort that's brought us to this point of having the future concept of a multiplex, which brought the construction to being down at the other site versus, and then, yeah, going way back, so much wish we'd just renovated what we have, but that ship has sailed. The expectations out there are, I still think, beyond what this is, which is, makes it even tougher. But yeah, what I saw in the binder, which led us to this 10, I can buy that. Many people are saying, like Councillor Dunham indicated, they want it. So give me a little more information, but I can buy what we've stepped to at this point.
Yeah, and I guess the conversation is, are we committed now? I mean, we're not going to decide this now because we don't have all the details, but, you know, we either need to keep moving forward or kind of stop and adjust. So, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Barkley. Yeah, I'm totally committed to moving forward. My frustration has been, and I've said this before, so my frustration has been, we have this whole other body of work around feasibility relative to funding that we haven't even looked at yet. So we always get stuck on, well, we have to have $10 million in, you know, $10 million of tax money or whatever. We don't even know that that's the right number. We haven't explored what the appetite from local and provincial and federal other funders might be. We always just look to, well, what can the government of Alberta give us, or what can the government of Canada give us? And so until I feel, until we really settle in and get that feasibility study work done and understand what the other opportunities are for funding, from my experience, that kind of work always happens at the same time as the other design pieces are going on. So I don't know, I would want to see us proceed with this facility for sure, but I really would like to see some time and professional expertise brought to bear on the work, so that we have a better picture about what we're really talking about for potential funders and fundraising. Thanks.
So, like, what does that mean exactly? Like having a consultant come in and do a feasibility study on
think so.
funding, or?
Yeah, a professional, somebody that knows. I mean, when we talk about grants within the context of the municipal council table, we're talking about government grants. We haven't had any sort of consideration around the other sector grants that are available out there, the for-profit sector that provide good levels of funding. People, corporate citizens within the community, large donations, large gifts from people in the region. I think we underestimate or understate just how much support there is out there. But until we have somebody actually sit down and have some conversations, we don't know. And so the cost of raising the money is as significant, or the work around raising the money is as significant as what we've paid so far for design and potentially engineering. But yet it's always, and it's not just here, I mean, that's typically what happens. It's like, well, we know how much an engineer is going to charge, but what do you mean we need to pay somebody to raise the money? It's like, because it's a skill set, it's a profession, and it's an expertise. I would really like to see us just sit down and have an initial conversation with someone that works in that area.
We're talking about the Aquatic Center. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and I apologize for being late. And yeah, and I assumed that it was the Aquatic Center. I guess my comment would be, and I think I made it a couple meetings ago, that I support moving on. You know, we've been at this now for 4 or 5 years. There's an expectation, and you know, and what's that saying? For every journey, you got to take the first step. And I think we're at the first step. I agree with Councillor Wing. We haven't really had a chat with a professional fundraiser. And I had a very high-level conversation with the STARS fundraisers. And they do have professionals. They are people that actually know how to get money. You know, and nothing against our administration or our counselors or anything like that. But we're not trained in that to go out and actually beat the bushes. And that's the advice I got from 2 of the STARS fundraisers was, if you're gonna do this, do it the right way, step back, get somebody that knows how to raise money and go. I think for me, we're looking at what, 32 million, that number's been floating around. I don't, you know, inflation and everything. If it's $10 million, Lord hates a coward. You know, and it is a lot of money. And, you know, I look at these other communities, same size, they've went out, they've built ball diamonds, they've got big centers, and how can they do it? Or what did they do that we're not doing? So I guess to make a long story short, I support moving forth, whatever that's gonna look like. And let's land on a number. And I think when we talk with the professional fundraisers, we're gonna have to have a number of this is what we wanna raise. So I think we need that discussion. I'll also mention we're 2 years out from an election, and I don't know who's running again or how that is all gonna turn out. But this could make or break this council, this aquatic center. I really feel that this is something that the public expects, and I think if it's communicated in the right way, and if we go out and we say we need to raise $10 million and they go, whoa, we're not gonna do that, now the ball's in their court. We can say, okay, we're gonna go off and buy 5 new trucks. It's, you know, it's a dead issue. Let's not beat ourselves up over it, but actually find or get a feel from the public. You know, when we started all of this, I remember those conversations. What do you want to see in a multiplex? Well, that's like talking to a kid about what do you want to get out of the candy shop, right? I want it all. And that's where we started, and this is where we've got to right now. So, make a long story short, I support it. Let's land on a number, and let's put some horsepower over the next couple of years to this so that we can actually go out and say, we're doing it, we've taken the step, get behind us, and let's get after it. Thank you.
Okay, so the last time we had this conversation, we determined at that time to kind of start with government funding and kind of see where that leads us. But now kind of hearing a different direction where we should hire a fundraiser. So I guess I'm looking at C.O. Becker, you're the recreation guy. You know, I guess my thought at the time was, well, are you putting the cart before the horse? Whereas if we get $1 million from government funding, that makes this thing look a whole bunch different than what we're hoping for. So thoughts and advice?
Thoughts would be that continue on government engagement, so looking for government dollars. I think that's part of the puzzle. I think direct administration to research, explore, present to you information in regards to a funding party to assist you and what that would look like, process, cost, benefit. And we can come back to you with more detail on that. And if you choose to advance into an RFP with a scope, then at least you're empowered to make that decision if you wish to advance. So I think they can go simultaneously. So yeah, I don't dispute any of the comments. Yeah, it to me was just confirmation you wish to advance. I appreciate your question to council. So we're hearing that you wish to continue on, but let's firm up the opportunity and what opportunities exist regarding additional funding.
Sure, and maybe next council meeting, we could have an agenda item with fundraiser on it. And maybe a bit of a report from administration on that process, and then you could get direction.
Sure.
Because you need to have direction to go that direction. So yeah, no, Councillor Maceras and then Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. We've got our new EDO position. Is the EDO going to have the skill set, the same skill or some of the skill set that a corporate fundraiser would have? No. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. After further discussion or listening to my fellow council members and CO Becker, et cetera, I think at this point in time, we've got enough to do. I would say not to bother with what my request was. Until we know what we're gonna get, what's the point of projecting those other numbers? So I'm comfortable. I've wanted this to progress from day one. It's always had my support. I just have gotten much more concerned in the last few months, seeing where we are, what's going on, and what other expenses we have in this town. So I guess for me, I still want it to come to fruition. I still want to, the community wants it. As Councillor Harrison had said, is that there is an expectation of something from the community. Unfortunately, the bar was set so high originally. So yeah, I would say for now, don't bother getting those numbers together. You've got enough on your plate until we start to see what we may be getting from the government. Then we can sort of revisit it at that point in time. So I'm comfortable to put my support, but to continue on with where we're going.
Guess we don't need to keep going down the list. Because that's the end of our money. And I think when you have a list up like that, Director Vickers, it just shows you, how do you do all these things, right? How do you do the arena expansion and the washroom, dressing room expansion and all that? And it's absolutely impossible.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Mayor Barkley. There's a lot, and that's kind of the intention is look beyond even the 2024 budget, and are we able to fund? And I think the last slide was, there's a question there. We haven't answered that question, but that was really related to this. The other part of why we want to present that is what else is missing that council really wants to drive forward. So we want to put it to you is, just because we're proposing these budgets to you is what is missing from your perspective. This is your chance to have that voice beyond administration that we should be going, we should be adding this into our capital project, or so that's your time to really share beyond what we're providing you. What's the budget time? So I now and into any time, like it's, if you have thoughts and ideas beyond what's funded and not funded. like
Yeah,
what's
for
your
sure.
vision?
So let's ask, does anybody have anything that's not in today's budget or in that to-do list for the next 50 years that should be there? Huh?
Well, I did mention one for the future, I don't have anything to put down for this year. I think we should put that list back up though and talk about each one of those things a little more to make sure everybody understands what they are. Because I've heard people ask, what is that? And, yeah.
Do you want to go down the list then? So the next one is the arena dressing room expansion at $4 million.
So this would be the expansion of the existing arena dressing room capacity. We have ongoing challenges with gendered change rooms, female-male teams, and just the size and capacity of the dressing room during tournaments and such. So we did have a preliminary cost estimate done by a construction firm that would look at essentially pushing out the east wall of the red ice surface and creating an additional bank of dressing rooms with external access, which would also somewhat help on that baseball front because we increasingly have a request from baseball. So this is an internally initiated project sort of based on user group inquiries and requests.
How many dressing rooms, Director
I'll have to pull up-
Jenkins?
I think it was 6 additional
Okay.
dressing rooms, yeah.
Okay,
I can bring the plans this afternoon or bit too.
so just kind of flip that a little bit, like are there opportunities to, we see schools bring in portals, are there opportunities to bring in portals to address some of this issue?
Yeah, it could definitely be something if there's, temporary or sort of interim types of ideas on that front too, so.
Do you think that's, we've been talking about this for a long time too, and, do you think that's something, that's somewhat urgent, that maybe you could bring in 2 portals or 4, or look into that and see what the cost is, and,
Yeah. I guess it depends who you ask how urgent it is.
yeah, okay, I don't know, so, okay. I guess based on your feedback.
What's the demand for a co-ed dressing room? 6 dressing rooms, is it like 300 girls and liquid?
Increasingly, you see, as opposed to completely female or male teams, is that most teams have a couple of girls on each team. We have done a small retrofit at the library or at the arena that created sort of additional closets, I guess, for lack of a better term, where the girls can go and change, but there's no washroom facilities or anything in those spaces. So there's not a separate area, but most teams are co-ed, is sort of what the trend is. And even there's been changes with Hockey Alberta in terms of how people are able to change and what those parameters are. Increasingly, we've had, especially with the younger age groups, they play half ice games to an older age now, so you end up with essentially 4 teams on each ice surface at a time, which is all 8 of our dressing rooms that we have right now. So typically you need a dressing room half an hour before and a half an hour after when teams are swapping. So there's challenges there as well in terms of the usability of the space for those activities.
Anything available through Hockey Canada? It's easy to sit and make these rules, and the municipality has to bear the costs. Is there anything that's available grant-wise through them? I mean,
Not that I'm aware of. The rules, I guess, that I'm aware of through Hockey Alberta, Hockey Canada now have to do with how kids have to arrive at, they have to essentially be wearing most of their undergear so that they aren't actually changing in an open way due to concerns, but it is something we hear from our user groups in terms of those limitations.
So, yeah, just having followed hockey for quite a while, it's all of the things that Megan just said. The 2 closets that are there, one's bigger than the other. And so if you go down to the arena and look at the scheduling board, you'll see that Innisfail is playing Cochrane. And it'll have dressing room 1 for Innisfail, dressing room 2 for Cochrane, and it'll say girl, and it'll be one of the closets, and girl will be the other closet. And then if somebody else is playing on the other side, it's a problem, because sometimes they even put the girls from 2 different teams in the same room, and no bathroom, and then you've got the security if they've got their cell phone, or just, yeah, what's happened is hockey has evolved. Ringette is gone from this area, and so that's why the teams are mixed. And so you have that situation. You have the ball requests for access to washrooms and dressing rooms, and at one time it was even looked at doing it on the west side. Yeah, it's all those things. And probably the largest challenge with bringing a portable in or something would be the washroom, the plumbing, so that's the problem that we're trying to solve.
I guess I just don't see this $4 million happening for a long time. So, you know, what is an interim fix?
Is there an interim fix?
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, we could certainly, explore some things in that interim, and whether we do, whether that $4 million starts to get added at the end of the 10-year capital plan, that it doesn't fall off the radar at some point. That it's an interim for the next 10 years working towards, or maybe it's 15 before that's on there, so.
Yeah, frankly, it's tagged for 4 or 5 years, 3 to 4 years out. Obviously, director and the team is getting feedback. I think we'll continue to monitor that feedback, and that'll be part of the measure, but then also starting to allocate some dollars, whether it's operationally through a rental system, and there is heated units that you can do full plumbing access, but certainly just want to get it on your radar.
And I guess next on the list is Dodds Lake. I know that was kind of grant-based as well. So,
Yeah, I can help with that one, I guess, so both of those, so the first one is the parking lot, so we did look at that parking lot development as a kind of a separate takeaway from the original, and looking at expanding the parking lot, what does that look like? When we did look into that, that broke us into the contamination of the area, so now we are monitoring it. But that price tag still is, that's reclaiming that site to make a parking lot work. And then the second one is kind of a phase one of the first phase of that report, the Dodds Lake report. Of $1 million, that's again, looking at that base area near the docks, putting a playground, a full playground, washroom facility in there. So that's kind of those two together.
So maybe kind of waiting for a grant opportunity to come along, Director Kennedy. And dog parking lot, is that dog park parking lot?
Yeah, that's the one.
Park your dogs here.
Dog park parking lot. That's when we came to council, was a request to see if there's an area up by the cemetery to put a parking lot and add an access into the dog park. Provided just a site plan of what that would look like. Now that we don't have the snow dump area up there, we have an opportunity to enhance that area, and that dog parking lot could be put up in that area.
Yeah, there's maybe opportunity for people to park at the library and walk across through the cemetery.
Yep.
On the road, I guess. Maybe. But, so is that kind of whenever, or like, do you have a time frame for that, or?
It's up to council.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, yeah, okay. And cemetery infill, we spoke about that a little bit yesterday, so. And then the Reckon Open Space Master Plan, so can you remind us what that is? Just a
Yeah,
new study?
So what we looked at there, again, that was more of an internal driven one. So we did do an update to the trail that we presented to you this week here, the trail master plan. It's kind of an expansion of that. So we do have that, we're going off a while. This would actually incorporate now rec and open space and combine it into one master plan, trying to take all the reports we've done to date. More of a tag for a project I think is important to have. Again, maybe not this year, but one that we should have on the list.
And then future ball diamonds, where are we at with capacity with ball and?
So that would tie into that planning exercise as well. So yeah, 2010 was the Recreation and Open Space Master Plan was the last time it was done, and it evaluated not only sort of the pedestrian network that we've kind of targeted that future facility demand, where stuff is, what we need to be looking for a community our size, and doing that sort of across the board engagement as well. So that would kind of tie into that future ball diamond conversation.
Okay. So Diamond 7, does it open? Yes, this year. Okay. And do other ball teams use that, or does anybody use that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is managed, we have it managed by the Community Facility Enhancement
yep.
Association. It has been, was utilized this summer. A lot of positive feedback that we had from the outside groups using that. We did get the announcer booth up. Next year they'll get it utilized, finished, as well as some announcing going out of there. So I think it's close to being completed. They've got even the sponsorship banners up there now, so.
Okay, sounds good. And then the indoor walking track, I don't know, I think when we were doing HCMA, that was 5 million plus, so I guess we'll add that to the to-do list, the wish list. Anything else anybody thinks should be on here that's not, just to kind of tag it? Councillor Bates?
Yeah, I just wonder if there, you know, we talked about portables for something else, whatever. Is there the potential for a small dome to make an indoor walking track that might get us by for X number of years? Or, like, I don't know what, total lack of knowledge, what could be. I know it's the one thing that I hear frequently that we don't have. And of course, it's very hard to build a good one. And I think we've looked with great imagination at every facility that we have to see if we could add it, and we haven't found that. We haven't found that schematic that works.
From my experience, council, the walking track is, although it's a important activity, it's a secondary type of activity on a bigger project. That's my experience. As you can consolidate with a current facility, maybe that's the reconditioned aquatic center, or I'm not sure, but usually it goes with another build, a bigger build. That's my experience. Because you don't typically just build a walking track facility, I don't think. If you have a field house type facility, dome, walking track obviously could be part of that. That's what I mean.
So is that something that we could put on the unfunded project relative to the indoor walking track / field house and see, just to have it there as a placeholder? Because a dome certainly would address that from a potential future project perspective.
It's really up to council to establish that. Up to you guys.
I quite honestly, from what hearing from the folks in the community whose kids especially play baseball and spend a lot of time in Red Deer County in the dome. I've been at events in that dome as well. I think it's worth putting on this list anyways, and as time goes by or as opportunities arise, we can go for a tour or we can learn more about it for sure. Calgary has an interesting dome program where they install domes for the winter and then take them down in the summer to facilitate those indoor winter activities. I just don't want to see us limit ourselves around what the potential might look like.
And I think if we could do it without spending a lot of money, if we could look at if we could just look at the old pool and say conceptually, is that a place where something could happen? Just conceptually, no. Because then it would tie together to the fundraising and the acceptance of number one up there. That you get your new pool and then you have a walking track potentially in the old pool building.
Yeah, I think there's probably a whole exercise there, if the commitment and that timeline on the pool is sort of established, that, going out and looking at what are the gaps in the community that we do need, to which that building could be repurposed, because it could be a number of things in terms of different parties in the community and where they're at with space and things like that, so.
And I think we did already ask the question. There's no way the walking track could be incorporated into the gym, that it missed.
My understanding was that it was in that project at one point and then it came out.
Right, but it can't.
Whether it could be retroactively put in, I'm not sure.
I think we asked that question and got a no, but.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of money and have no walking tracks.
I think just the cost of that kind of came in over and they decided that put in more things and you wouldn't be able to go walk there in the daytime anyway. It's a community, you have to be after hours and stuff, so. Prioritizing, that's all.
So, yeah, so unfunded projects happen anytime, so that's your conversation. We want to make sure we capture 2024. It doesn't have to be big grandiose, but there's something might be missing from your perspective. Even going into the new year, something may pop up and can it be funded? It's largely comes out of reserves. What is that impact? But we want to make sure if something of significance, we would have to go back and rework the financial side and potentially take out these proposed projects. So, today, tomorrow, if there's something that pops up at you that, no, we need to really advance this project, this is the time, because we would have to, again, take away some time to determine how we would fund that unknown project.
I'm just going to ask about signage. So whatever stage we're in, 4, is it 3 or 4? So I know at one time, like last term, there was a plan to have kind of a welcome sign at 50th and 50th, no, 50th and 2A. And is that still something that's going to happen, or has that kind of gone by the wayside?
Yeah, we paused it for this year.
Okay.
We can definitely bring it back if council wants to revisit that. The letter, originally was proposed lettering for that welcoming.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
don't
what
think
you're
I'm thinking that so much. I'm just thinking of kind of a nice welcome to Innisfail, brick bottom.
There was we were gonna work with the chamber at
and
one
not-
point on
and
that.
not the
so-
screen.
So that,
Not the
because we
screen.
had gone out to RFP on that.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
That sign.
I'm just thinking
And
kind
then
of a
that
plain.
kind of went away, but
Okay.
now we have the new sort of trailhead sign there, whether we can,
Okay, I
on
was
that
just-
side, but then there's the letters on the Shoppers Drug Mart side as
Yeah, no,
well.
I'm not thinking about the big orange letters, because I think that's, we're not Toronto. But just kind of a nice brick welcome, welcome to Innisfail thing. But I didn't know whether that was still part of the sign path that we're on, or,
We could definitely revisit it. We have an old sign at the shop. No. The granite one. I did ask Walla Signs to look at it to see if that's an option to refurbish that one with Innisfail and blah, blah, blah on it. But we could create a whole new one. We have it just sitting at the shop. It seems like a waste to have a big granite sign to throw away, but for something else. But we could definitely revisit options. But yeah, we can bring that back.
$50,000?
So does council want to rework the capital listing again, the one that's proposed? You have the initial presentation, you want to kind of work through it again? If there's any questions or concerns, are you okay with the capital side?
do you guys want to review? Do we need to, look at, I guess I would like to spend some time, whether this afternoon or whatever, but even on the operating side, kind of seeing, okay, other places where we can trim to try to get down a little bit from where we are and make things a little more manageable for people but
So do you want to switch to the operational side for now and go there until lunch and then?
it's up to the group. What do you like, Councillor Maceros?
Sure, that sounds good. Where are we right now in terms of the increase? 4.11, okay, thanks.
Yeah, so $685,084 is what we need.
Yep. Yep.
4.11,
4.11 is the tax increase.
$685,084.
We can put up the operating PowerPoint.
That's the equivalent of the 4.11 tax increase.
We have to
That's how
make it
much they
into a
need.
PowerPoint, though.
So hang on. So 685, 310 is coming from assessment increase, and 374 is the tax increase.
Correct.
Yeah. And transferring 1.8 to reserves.
That's correct. That's okay. Is there a number that you guys would like to target to get down to, or?
I would like to see us at 2.5 to 3, but if, maybe it's not possible, but
So you want to get us down to 2.5 or 3 with 2% still going to, so what should we do here, I guess?
or is it better to leave this with you for a couple of hours and take a break? And then come back as opposed to us trying to go through fine tooth comb it? It's up to you. We can do either.
Well, I suggest we just work through the slides quickly,
Okay.
just take a peek at it.
Okay.
There might be something there, you can
Sure.
question operational, but, operational projects.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just kind of go through and, but yeah, we can take it away too over lunch and come back to you.
Okay, so we'll go through sheet by sheet first. We can get that
Yeah.
done probably before lunchtime
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
So on general government, outside of changing the tax rate, there's likely not a whole lot to be cut from this department. Is there anything here that you guys have questions on that you think could potentially be cut?
No, I guess where my mind goes, maybe because it's easy, is maybe there's, to reduce that tax, maybe it's less of a transfer to reserves. And I know that's bad fiscal management as well, but, you know, how do you
That is
do
one
it?
way to cut, is to cut that transfer to reserve. So the first one is to the pool. That is an additional, that is $399,000 going into reserves, is in going in to pay for that pool debt. $189,000 is new transfer to reserves from this year. That you want to maintain?
Would council consider an increase to your franchise fees? Yes. Not looking at Gavin. Councilor Bates.
I was just going to comment from this slide that we all need to realize. It could be all over the place, but the residential, some residents are going to probably see more than 4.73% in their assessment. Others will see less. Doubt if anybody will see a minus, but they might. So we need to realize that too. They're going to see that over and above whatever we do with this budget. The other question that was thrown out, I have no appetite to increase the franchise fees.
I mean, I think what we're really looking at is that $374,000, right? We know that there's 310 coming from or we think
Correct.
there's 310 coming from an assessment increase. So
That's right.
out of that 374 that we need from the tax increase, if we're cutting that by one, like one and
Yeah,
a
and if we
half.
leave the 189 in, because the
Yeah.
189,000 is for going into the pool debt, that leaves 185,000 left that we've absorbed or that we've used as a tax increase for the town operations. Approximately 185,000. So that would be 2.11% in total, would be that kind of amount roughly.
Okay.
So we'll move on to the council slide. Is there anything here that you would like to be cut? So we did run some numbers yesterday for the PD. We would like to remove, so we would leave AUMA in. Let me just write this down as I say it. Or AB Muni, sorry, I keep referencing AUMA. We would remove all of the FCM, any other conferences, and that would actually generate an additional, and as well as also the incorporating travel expenses as well. So that increases it to an additional $40,000 onto the budget that we can identify for PD budgets. And we thought $6,000 for the mayor and $4,000 for the rest of council.
Would 4 get people to FCM?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, probably-
with rooms and
Yep.
everything? Yep, okay.
Probably 3 would get to FCM, and
Okay.
then they would still
Unless
have
it's
some
in
money.
Toronto, okay.
In Toronto, yeah.
No, I said unless it's in Toronto.
Well,
Just kidding.
this is just this year. We can always look at
Yeah.
expanding it in future years, depending on the usage of it, too,
Sure,
right?
okay.
If we run this for a year or 2 years and see that it's being highly used, we can look at increasing it in a future council year. However, the offset, if we do this and no one ever uses it, then likely we would not want to spend the time to increase that budget, right?
Okay.
So that's replacing the 2,000?
Correct.
With, what did you say? 6 for
So
the mayor and
6,000
4?
for the mayor, 4,000 for each
Okay.
councilors, but that is removing FCM, any leaders caucus, the EDA conference, any other conferences that would have previously been included. The only one that would still be semi-mandatory would be the AB Munis conference that we budget for every council member to attend, regardless of the PD allotment. Is that appropriate for this year, maybe?
So does that, quickly, does that save like $5,000 or something? or-
No, it's not saving any money. It's taking the money that was previously
Fordham
put into
7
that
is-
budget and just reallocating it to that
Fordham 6 is
individual professional
24 and-
development amounts.
So that's 30. 4 times, oh, plus AM still in.
Yeah.
But could we agree that we would pool our PD money to have a professional development activity here that we would all, like bring in a governance coach, for example, just as an example? So would we be able to access that money then as a group to say, yeah, I can't spend $4,000 on a conference, but I
Want
don't
to
know.
spend 5,000 as a group
As
to
a
bring in a
group,
speaker,
yeah,
bring in
yeah,
someone in?
Yeah,
I mean,
potentially, okay.
Yeah, as budget allows, you'll see those numbers and you may say, hey, projecting not to utilize all those dollars, let's do something else.
Yep,
It's
absolutely.
appropriate.
Does anything need to be cut out of this budget, or are we happy with where it stands? Okay. So the general admin, so this is where we pay for a lot of the corporate service kind of things, like the computer maintenance side. We did reallocate all of the computer maintenance from the rest of the departments into this budget, just to kind of streamline that kind of thing. So we do pay for all of our 4 real IT solutions, which is all of our IT management, including our emails, as well as our Adobe and our eSite security software. We pay for our Diamond, our financial software out of here, Civic Web, Zoom, council chambers, repair and maintenance for the council chambers. IT software comes out of this budget. Our Hippo, which is our facility maintenance software. ActNet, which is our facility or our programming booking software. Unisite, which is our land program, I guess. It's online. Everyone can see all of our infrastructure, linear infrastructure, and as well as all of our buildings and properties on that site. Altilis and Fleet Pro. We do have contracted services, the big one being our HR contract, our after-hours on-call service, as well as our Shred-it contracted services run out of here. Our general insurance comes out of this budget. It did increase from $210,000 to $230,000 this year. Equipment under 5K increased from 10,000 to 32,000. We do have 6 laptops and 6 desktop computers scheduled for renewal this year. Legal services, assessor services, and audit fees also come out of this budget. This budget does not have an operating project to potentially cut. I'm not sure what else could be cut out of this budget. I would take any suggestions.
No, I think it is what it is, right? Can't really change it. So.
Police services, we do have our 3 admin support staff over at the detachment there, and the main brunt of this department is our RCMP contract. We are looking at a $252,000 increase for this year, and it's sitting at $1.864 million, which we can't cut that. Fire services, so we do see the revenue from Red Deer County at $120,000. We did implement the fire services master plan at $35,000 this year, or in 2024. We are looking to do a radio replacement. Each of our firemen carry a portable radio. We do have 33. They are $3,500 each to change out, and we do need to start changing 3 per year going forward. as well as we do have 4 base stations that also cost $6,000 each to replace. Telecommunications for our fire services comes out of this department, the big one being our dispatch services from Red Deer 911, as well as the radio costing and landlines and internet for the fire hall. Firefighting supplies also saw an increase, up from $45,000 to $55,000. Part of that is our bunker gear and all the other items do have to be on a 10-year replacement cycle as per NFPA standards. And bunker gear, which is the uniform they wear, is $3,200 each to replace, with helmets being $600, boots $700, and gloves $200.
Can I ask a question, just a process question, I guess, before we go any further? So as each of your departments are preparing their proposed budget for the coming year, is there, like, I'm not a fan of zero-based budgeting. This is not what this is about. But do we challenge our departments to find ways to become more efficient, to save money, to cut expenditures, as opposed to just saying, well, this is kind of status quo and this is the way we do things, and so we just leave it as it is? Do we actually challenge everybody to say, everybody needs to find 2%? And do you know what I mean? Like, what's the process to ensure that we're not just continually just adding on to what we've always had?
Yeah, we definitely ask all of our managers to do all that. And I will say that over the past 10 years or so, we've had very minimal tax increases. We've already done a lot of that. We've already done a lot of the cutting out over the last 10 years because we haven't been able to absorb some of those increases. We are starting to try and put some of those back in because we do need that. Like, for example, the Fire Services Master Plan, it is an addition this year, but it is something that we do need in order to develop the future of that department. But we definitely expect that our managers and supervisors and directors come in with their budgets to be what we need and not anything extra. Like, we've already asked them to do any cuts that they can. So the Fire Services Master Plan will create a strategic framework for the delivery of fire protection services over the next 10 years. The plan will consider the current and anticipated community risk assessment, so those are the fire risks in the community, the current operational model, and the fire protection resources required. Fire Services is faced with increasing call volumes, and there are indications of increasing community growth. So there's 3 phases. So phase 1 would be the community risk assessment, phase 2, the resource requirement, and phase 3, the master plan. Okay, we'll move on to emergency management. So the brunt of this department did not change from year to year. However, we did add in the 2024 operating project for $10,000 as an emergency coordination center exercise. This is something that we do have to do every 10 years, or sorry, every 2 years. It's $10,000. And that could look at a bunch of different ways. It could be a regional exercise with our neighbors, or it could be just an internal, it could be a tabletop exercise, could be something, but it is something that we are required to do every 2 years. Okay, we'll move on to the helipad. So the helipad has been operational for a year now. There have been 5 landings to date in 2023, and the costs include the daily inspection of helipad, the training of staff, miscellaneous maintenance, snow removal of helipad. I do have an itemized thing for tomorrow that I had intention to bring tomorrow with the snow removal costing for the helipad. I did not prepare that to date, but. Okay, so we do have, and so we'll move on to bylaw. So we do have 1 summer student. We do have a transfer to reserve sitting at $20,000. We do have the second phase of an operating project. So this year we did do the community safety and well-being plan. That cost was $20,000. So we did implement a $30,000 project for next year to be the implementation of that plan. Health and safety. So this is where we do all of our health and safety training for all of our staff, including our summer students, which do have to happen every year potentially. So we do provide hearing tests, confined space, fall protection, WMIS, first aid, basic life support, ground disturbance, both for the employee and the supervisor, cargo securement, flagger training, as well as our own safety officer training. We do pay for the work alone program for $6,400 a month, or a year, sorry, as well as in 2024, we are earmarked to have our external core audit with a cost of $6,000.
Mayor Barkley?
What would that telecommunications for working alone look like? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Through to Eric, telecommunications, $6,400. What is that for the work alone program?
Yeah, so it's a program that we've had for a number of years now, and what it is it's actually apps on the individual employees' phones, and when they are working alone, they have to open up the app and check in, and then it creates a mechanism for the app to check back in with the employee either every 2 hours or at intervals that they set, depending on the dangerousness of their activity. It could be every 15 minutes, or if you're just, say, driving to a conference, it would be every 2 hours that you have to check back in,
So
just to
that's-
maintain safety.
That's the cost of the apps?
That is the cost of the apps.
And how many apps are we looking at? Everybody that carries a phone?
No, I'm not sure of the exact, 35 members, yeah.
35 apps, so, okay, so when the mayor goes to Edmonton by herself, she'll,
The mayor would not have it.
Yeah, that service is available to whoever works or is with the organization. Not all of us utilize it. We did have a chat about this the other day, and it is utilized by those that are working alone, and available. So we are gonna reevaluate. This number may come down in the budget based on the amount of registrations we have for the app. But right now, that's the current budget. It
okay.
is still, it is a useful tool for us.
Yeah, no doubt, I fully agree with that. It's just I had to get my head wrapped around who would be carrying the,
Primarily, it's our operations staff and those kind of employees that are working regularly by themselves. Yeah, yep,
Okay.
definitely.
Yep, thank you.
When they do those call-outs at night, the old process would be to wake up another staff member and call them. Now the process is to use this app. It's been operational for a number of years now and successful in its use, so.
I've got a question. I'm wondering, back to the community safety and well-being plan, is it possible to do a phased implementation with that and cut some, like, spread it out?
Member Barkley, Councilor Reserves, definitely. In my mind, this is one area we'd like to come back to you with a deferral to 2025. Part of it is the workload that all of us currently are holding. The other part is that we don't know what the data is going to demonstrate. We don't want to prolong too long because we have engaged community, and if you wait too long, then this exercise will be held with high criticism. But there's one area I'd like to come back to the team and say, let's look at this one and potentially push it to 2025. Yeah, the $30,000. I wouldn't mind engaging with the team, but that's likely what I would come back and recommend, to put it to 2025. Again, just to explain, we have not completed phase one, and that's not going to be completed till towards the end of first quarter. So that's kind of the idea.
Okay, so we'll move on to roads. So this department has two operating projects. One, an infrastructure study for $15,000, as well as sidewalk repairs for $100,000. Our contracted services did go up $20,000. So the center lines is $15,000, sidewalk and rink snow removal at $15,000. Snow removal contract is $20,000. Dust control at $10,000, clean harbors at $5,000, and Main Street and intersection crosswalk, $20,000. So that's the new section this year. That's the new thing that was added. This does cover 4 summer staff, as well as the electricity for the shop, as well as all the light poles throughout the community, and transfer to the fleet reserve sitting at $290,000.
So, Director Kennedy, curious, what if we did 50,000 in sidewalk repairs and transferred 200,000 to reserves, or,
Yeah, doable. We did do that last year where we took away 50,000. We did come to you in regards to our asset kind of update.
Yep.
We have dropped a letter and a half
okay,
in regards to our sidewalks.
okay,
So would not like to do that again.
okay,
but-
no, fair enough. No.
But we can. In regards to the transfer to reserve, we are, this is definitely the highest GL that contributes to the
Okay.
fleet reserve. This is definitely a struggle when it comes to maintaining our fleet, and as I've come to you in regards to the number of fleet that we have to replace. To pull away from this is just gonna, we can do it now, but it's just gonna hit us in 10 years where we
Okay.
can't afford to start replacing our heavier, bigger equipment.
Okay, so that was a no-no then.
So,
0
worked
for
around
2.
it.
Okay, move on. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I did just put a candy in my mouth, so. No. So in parks, they do have 2 operating projects, so a tree replacement project for $25,000, as well as a tree removal project around town for dangerous and damaged trees for $11,000. They do cover 8 summer or seasonal staff. All the porta potty rentals for around the green space facilities comes out of here. The transfer to reserve at $350,000 comes out of the Parks Department, as well as purchases of some small equipment, the trimmers, saws, things like that, for just over $5,000. Now this transfer to reserve, 50,000 of that does go to the fleet reserve, and the 300,000, sorry, goes to the new infrastructure life cycle reserve. And if you remember from the capital project, most of those projects were coming out of that reserve.
Okay.
Okay, public transportation. So this department has seen a fairly large jump this year, mainly with the contracted services for the Pace Bus contribution. So the annual contract is sitting at $130,000, with the chartered services sitting at $25,000. Now, we do receive $42,000 from MSI operating to help offset the cost of this. We do see a transfer to reserve of $10,000 to go to the fleet reserve, and we've added the fuel cost of $20,000 for this year as well. The fuel cost for the $20,000 is just an estimate. We are running on only a partial year this year to kind of gauge our estimate on as well. So that could end up being less or more depending on the usage next year. Okay. Move on to storm sewer. Now, any changes we make to this department will not have an effect on the tax base. This is a self-funded department. So there is the revenue of $131,868 that is based from the flat rates that we generate off of the utility bills. And in that is the repairs and maintenance for the catch basins and the storm drains, any digs and repairs, any flushing or the camera of the lines. And we do have a transfer to reserve, to the utility reserve for $60,410. Okay, we'll go to water now. So again, for storm sewer, water, wastewater, and garbage, these are all self-funded departments, so any changes will not create any extra money on our tax base. We are just going to be balancing the transfer to reserve based on these departments. So for water, we are looking to do a 15-cent increase for our consumption, up to $2,288,000. We are seeing an 8-cent increase from Mountain View Regional Water Commission for 2024. We did have a bit of discussion yesterday, but we do have 2 operating projects for this department, one being the Reservoir 1 renovation for $50,000, and a second one for a valve repair replacement for $50,000. Now, that is an annual project that happens every year. It just depends on which valves and which like which valves need to be repaired or replaced. Contracted services, so any SCADA maintenance, our first calls, any instrument tests comes out of this budget. They do have a summer student that is shared with wastewater. We do have some transfer to reserves, 25,000 to the utility fleet capital reserve, and 149,000 to the utility capital reserve.
So the Reservoir 1 renovation, if we took that out, you're saying that's going to have no impact on,
It will impact the rate for the water utilities, but it's not going to
taxes.
impact the
Gotcha.
tax increase.
okay?
Okay. Wastewater as well, so we are looking at a 20-cent increase in consumption, as well as a $2 increase on the wastewater flat rate, up from $10 to $12. We were given a 5-cent increase from the SRD Commission. We do have one operating project in this department, which is for manhole repair and replacement, sorry. This is one of those projects that happens year after year. It just depends on different manholes that we replace this year versus last year. Again, they also pay for some contracted services, SCADA first calls instrument tests. They also pay for the coveralls at $10,000. We are transferring to the utility fleet capital reserve in the amount of $73,000. And we're pulling from the utility capital reserve in $22,000 to help balance this department out.
I have a quick question. So, not that I want to spend more. Is this typically the category, though, where we did the lining in previous years? Are we? It was capital. Okay.
What we would do here, manhole repair and replacement, our focus the last couple of years with this project is lining of the manholes for the I&I.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so solid waste, this is both our garbage services as well as our transfer station. So we are doing a transfer to reserve to the general cap reserve to pay back the purchase of the garbage bins until they get fully paid back, as well as our E360 contract is up in 2024, so you will see that early in the new year with the tender going out and a new contract coming before council for approval. So is there any further discussion on utility rates? So FCSS, or social planning, we did see some grant revenue increased in the amount of $216,934. We did basically take that and put that all into grants to others. That went up from $120,000 to $129,000. We do see some internal programs in the amount of $33,600 as well.
Can I ask a couple of questions, please? Sure. Are there restrictions or rules coming down from the provincial government on their grant as to how much can be recovered for administration at the town end?
As long as it's able to be allocated towards that, the FCSS mandates, many FCSS programs don't grant out money. They pay for staff that run programs.
Right,
So
okay.
it's sort of
Okay.
a philosophy within.
Oh, okay. So I stewed about this one last night, and I want to go back to, I'd like to go back to that conversation about the 80-20 versus the 60-40, because stop it. Yeah, it's way worse than that. We're operating under the model we are. Anything that we're spending over and above that original 80-20, are we still applying the FCSS restrictions on those grants?
No, and that's the part that, yes, we call this FCSS, but the department is actually social planning. So we are able, in our 40, able to spend on things that are direct intervention or things like that don't have to meet that specific FCSS mandate. We have to ensure that our 20% when we do our reporting falls within that classification, that it meets their stipulations
Okay.
to qualify for the FCSS grant.
Okay. I wonder though, then from a government relations or an advocacy perspective, if we shouldn't be more deliberate about that language so that we can be actually saying to the government, like, yes, we received this funding from you through FCSS, but we as a community are required to add on to it far exceeding that 20%. I just think that might help with that conversation. I don't want, yeah, sort of the misunderstanding about that larger contribution. I think I like the language around, that's what I was looking at last night. I like the language around social planning as the primary language that we communicate with rather than FCSS, just for that reason. I think that I'm proud of the fact that we have added to and grown that FCSS base funding, but I don't think enough people understand that. And yeah, I mean, some people don't like the words social planning, but so I mean, it could be, you know, it could be around community capacity building, or there's lots of language, but I would really like to see us focus on that different language if possible.
We just had a brief conversation too yesterday about whether, you know, even how is there an FCSS budget page and a social, you know,
That would be really helpful.
that there's those differentiation that, you know, even back to Todd's comment yesterday about, you know, what is the municipality's responsibility and then being able to determine some of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, from my perspective, and part of my concern about bringing it up was it's like, I don't want this to come onto the table as being an area that we're going to cut. But I would really like more clarity around sort of what that looks like. And yeah, then we can kind of go from there and focus more on that community piece and whatever. Anyways, thank you. I'm glad that we're on the same page.
Well, and I would even like to see who we funded in the past year, and is there opportunity for a discussion with one or two of those larger organizations to say, here's where we're at with our budget.
Yeah.
You know, can we continue on doing this? Maybe, maybe not, but
Typically in the past, we don't actually fund what they ask for. Like, they come in with an ask and the board
But-
determines what they do. So I can put up that slide again.
But it's
that it
kind of
is
a
the-
chicken and an egg thing.
Yeah.
Speaking with my old former funder's hat, if there's money,
Yeah.
there are programs. It doesn't always go the other way around.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that community safety and well-being plan too, is to be a tool for the FCSS board to help to evaluate priorities as well, in terms of where they focus funding. But again, I had the list essentially yesterday that I can get the breakdown between the Red Deer Catholic and Chinook's Edge, but it's 92,000 goes to the school divisions. There was 3,000 to the senior center, 3,000 to Henday, and 2,000 to victim services, I believe, so.
yeah, and I think that evaluation piece is important. So, you know, we get feedback on the programs that we are funding through school boards and what are those outcomes.
And they do provide a report each year, and that's.
Because you need that, right, Director Jenkins? Yeah.
Kristen mentioned the other day as to why they've pushed back their timing so that the board is actually able to see the reports from the previous year before they allocate for the next year
Yep.
to help to evaluate that as well.
Just to add, the board they do go through a rigorous review, supported by administrative management to scrutinize those applications and make sure those mandates line up. Has to line up with the mandate of the government for that funding, but it's highly scrutinized by a few layers, so, yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to the cemetery. So they do pay for one summer staff. We did increase the revenues in the cemetery considerably this year. And they do have an operating project for $25,000 for new concrete runners for the cemetery. They do have a transfer to reserve in the amount of $7,500, and that is equal to the revenue that we received from the perpetual care. And so that is an in and an out, so if it's 7,500, we'll transfer 7,500. If it's 10,000, we transfer 10,000. Okay. We'll move on to municipal planning. So we do see the safety code levy. It is just an in and out on the budget this year, so, or every year it is. We receive it when people pay their permits, and then we have to remit that to the government. Contracted services was moved to the admin budget. That is the Muni site, which is our GIS and asset management software, as well as our Altalus subscription. Planning services is sitting at $25,000, and that is to cover PCPS and professional support. Grants to others is still here with $10,000 for the facade program and $60,000 for the infill program, as well as we do have the operating projects in the amount of $27,000, $12,000 for an air photo and $15,000 for downtown initiatives. Is there anything you guys would like to talk about this one?
Yes, please. Yeah, so yesterday we talked a little bit about the PCPS contract and professional support and the fact that we've got some hours built up. Would it be possible to reduce this budget amount, given that?
Potentially, we could basically limit that we aren't going to utilize hours, in addition to sort of our membership and the base usage that would result from subdivision applications, that we would sort of eliminate a bunch of services that we utilize PCPS for.
And that'd be a takeaway I need to understand. That'll be part of our administrative discussion before I agree with the director's willing to cut. I like to understand what that looks like.
Could I just ask, what are the downtown initiatives again?
Again, so this is essentially providing the ability to do things like the banners,
Okay.
that lot downtown that we can,
Yep, yep.
you know, tents and picnic tables and crosswalks.
Yeah, no, under the heading planning, it just, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Are we good to move on, or does someone still have a question? Okay, so we have our subdivision land department now. So the big one is there is that transfer to the capital budget for $1.5 million to fund the capital project that we have to build a couple of houses in Napoleon Meadows. With that we do see land sales increasing to $2,475,000. That is for potential houses that we would be building and selling, as well as some potential sales in the Southwest Industrial Land as well. This department is kind of one of those net to zero departments, so any reductions to this will not have any impact on taxes. So. Are we good with that? We do. Okay, campground. So we did see the land rental income increase from 17,000 to 19,000. The expenses on here are just really the utilities and like electricity and natural gas, as well as we do see an $8,500 transfer to reserve for this department. Okay. So economic development, the big thing here is the addition of the new EDO staff position. We do have some CAPE and EDA fees in the amount of $7,500, contracted services for $50,000, as well as grants to others to support that kind of economic development in the amount of $15,000. So this is kind of a new initiative. We don't have any kind of rules around that yet, and that may come shortly if it's approved.
When do you anticipate that position starting?
We would put out advertising before the holidays, even if budget is approved.
Likely it would take 4 weeks-ish or so, 4 to 6 weeks for the application process and interview process, and that's a good number. It could be in the first quarter.
So once we have an EDO, do you think that contracted services would change?
So that is significantly reduced from previous years. But that would be the moving forward of that strategic plan as well, so.
In my view, it'd be starting to lessen over time. I think skills are reliant on professional support as we bridge in this new system.
Okay, we'll move on to communications, or tourism, as it may still say in your books. So the big one here is special events. They do pay for all the special events for the town, pretty much. It is sitting at $45,000, which was lowered last year already. I believe it was 65, was it 65,000 yet last year? So in that, the parade, there's 2 registration nights per year, Youth and Seniors Week, Hillside Vibes, the Skate Park Community Event, Christmas Tree Lighting, Canada Day, Community Awards, Family Day, and Winterfest. This department also pays for like the smartphone app as well as the website hosting. Community services programs. So they do cover one summer student that is earmarked for the skate park. We've done that for a few years now. It's been quite successful to have a summer student work there. Our contracted services for our yoga or paddle boarding or things like that comes out of here, as well as our joint use expenses, as well as the revenue. So any revenue that we receive from the schools gets offset by any expenses they purchase. For example, if they need new volleyballs, they will make a request to us. We'll buy that based out of this money, and the balance of that goes into a reserve, right? So if we have too many bookings, we'll put lots of money into reserve, and if we have not enough bookings and they ask for too many expenses, then we actually pull from that joint use reserve to offset that. Okay. Community services admin. So this is where we see our miscellaneous revenue from elemental energy. It is $20,000 that is earmarked directly to come in and then go back out again to grants to others, as well as we do see $23,000 from MSI to help offset the historical village. So there's 2 grants to others tabs in your binder. So the first one is 5770, and that is at $63,000, and that pays for the historical village in $30,000. Community grants for $13,000, as well as a public art proponent for $20,000. So this would be intended to grant out funds to individuals or organizations to do public art in the community. Then we also have grants to others at 5771. That increased from $20,000 to $25,000. $20,000 of that is that elemental energy grant out. We did add in an additional $5,000 for internal kind of programs. This is not necessarily money that we are going to be spending outwards. It really is just an internal transfer of putting the revenue to the pool department and an expense to this department to kind of offset those pool passes that we've been giving out as a part of that program.
Okay, with respect to the art stuff, like, I guess I would like to see us not bring it internal, or I think community services is already doing those applications, which is great. I think what I'm looking at is there opportunity to kind of multiply those funds? So I know, I don't think the municipality is able to apply for grants, like through Alberta Arts and Culture or the Art Foundation, et cetera. But if an organization came, like the Art Club or IWIC, and if, should there be some kind of I guess a funding from an organization that's coming forward? So if we put in 75%, they put in 25, or we put in 50, they put in 50, and is there opportunities for matching? So they put in 2, we put in 2, can they now take 4 and take it to arts and culture and get another 4 because it's 50-50? I mean, I don't know how the grant system works in that world. I know how it works in some other worlds, but not that one so much. But I'm just wondering if, that the program it grows more because we're using external organizations for that money to go through, almost like our facade program, right? If you want to have a facade improvement, you need to put in some, we put in some. And I also would like some policy, I think, around what it might look like. So we have our values, we have our mission, vision, and you know, do we see projects before they get put up? I don't know, that's a lot of blabbering. But
Yeah, and I think that's where this came from, is that we don't have the capacity to be that right now without either adding
Right.
committee and oversight and that vision. Could there be a matching requirement within the policy? That could be something to look at, but I think from the organizational standpoint, without having additional resource to put forward to do things like what is the vision?
Okay.
The art activities to date have been successful in the
Yep.
last couple of years, I would say, and that the community is stepping up to fill a perceived need and a void there. And I know that particularly Iwick and Henday, they have been exploring the rest of
Yes.
the sort of grant landscape around public art.
I guess I'm just looking at Director Jenkins, if we can make that 20, do 5 projects as opposed to 2 somehow, and maybe that's kind of done already through Community Services and Standing Committee, or through IWIC coming forward, or who's ever coming forward.
And I guess that is an opportunity to structure it such that there is a matching component
Yeah,
to it. But again, I think without taking that step to be the direct controller of what the art is and how it's being done, I think that's where the challenge on the resource front starts to show
Yeah.
itself.
And I wouldn't want to see 50-50 matching. I think that's way too much to ask, but they do have opportunities to apply, right, where we don't. And
Just wondered, I think Megan mentioned a component of the application is to demonstrate leveraging other grant opportunities, put it back to the applicant. Because they would want to leverage additional resources if they could too, I would imagine. And I think the funding for what I understand, it's only partially funding, not everything is funded 100%.
yeah, like I think the theater is through arts and culture, through a grant, a big portion of that was. And
So I think in the absence of the policy, I appreciate that there's a placeholder for some funding, but I would really like to see us focus on, and I know this is as much a capacity issue as any other part of it, but it's the most significant piece for me is you could put 20,000 and say to groups, you can apply and we'll give you, $1,000 at a time or 5,000. The rest of it is up to you. That's fine. That's what we do with some of our other grants. But however we want to play in this realm of public art, the policy and the way we engage the community, I think, is the most important piece for me. And I know we brought a draft policy forward, I think last fall. I think it's been a year ago. I hope that this year, at some point in time, this coming year, we can revive that and take a look at it.
It's a question, I guess, what is missing? I know the policy within a framework is a framework, and it's a visual, it's a visionary, it's a rationale.
Yes.
What is missing right now, I guess? I'm not challenging, I'm just.
No, I think in going back to the initial discussion, and I think we withdrew it based on, I think we were missing that community piece. I think that I think, if my memory serves me correctly, we talked about pulling a group of community people together to talk about, so does the public art policy merely protect our interests as the owner of the public art that stands on the corner, or does it also serve to build capacity in the community to grow the collection and not necessarily have to own it, but be able to contribute to it or whatever? I think we have good bones for the policy. I just think there was, the conversation that I remember was we wanted to engage the community and put more meat on those bones.
Would that be more situated to a community culture plan?
Sure.
I think that, because you drive your policy based on a community vision of, here's where
Totally.
we're going. Administration's lacking that directive.
Well, we can't be experts on everything, but,
Right.
right?
So then
Absolutely.
you build capacity within the community council's ultimately
Right.
vision. I
Right.
think that's what's probably missing.
Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, even, I'll shut up, but even those little free libraries, and I know there's policy work that's being proposed there, but they may fit within that community
Totally.
master plan as well, so.
Absolutely. Do you want to add budget?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, yeah,
Well, maybe
Well,
that's allocation.
maybe.
Well, and that becomes the conversation, you know, the intent behind including this in the current sort of structure that we have is that over the last year or two, a large portion of those community grants have gone towards murals. So is it working in that we have now, 4 additional murals, and we didn't fund there was no town funding in the first mural. So by increasing that availability, would that momentum continue sort of, again, in the interim, while some of these larger, sort of more structural
Right. Well,
pieces
and did we,
come together?
did we define what is it working looks like before we even wrote the first check? Like, did we have that conversation first to say, we'll know that we're getting somewhere with our public art based on this and this and this? You know, there would be economic things that could come to bear, whatever. But again, that part of that planning piece is to say, this is why we would do it. This is what we hope to accomplish. And then here's the evidence that we accomplished or we didn't, and then go from there.
With this dialogue, is council okay then to take this away to further explore, you know, understanding policy would become part of a bigger conversation, maintain the budgets, but let administration kind of ponder these comments and what are the different steps to have a more robust plan for public art or culture in a
Yeah.
bigger context.
I would like to see that. I think, you know, just minimally familiar with Sylvan Lake and their whole program, and City of Red Deer has one. I think they have this program called Meet the Streets or something, and Edmonton is example. I believe they will contribute up to $8,000, but I think there's a requirement of something from like the community organization as well. I don't know what all the detail is, but again, that goes back to your capacity, right? I'm talking about places that are larger than Innisfail and have more capacity in administration. So I think maybe look for direction. I kind of like the idea of a community arts and culture plan, because it's not just about one thing. It's about multiple things. And, you know, pretty soon it gets so far out in front of us that it's kind of going everywhere, and yeah. Anyway, not sure what anybody else thinks or.
Okay, are we good to move on to the arena? So the arena did see some increases to their revenue. We are starting to finally see that kind of pre-COVID levels for at least our side on the revenue side of things, which is good. We do see that Red Deer County contribution sitting at $187,000 as well. They do pay for contracted services in the amount of $25,000, and that covers things like security, ice painting, board cleaning, things like that. They do have an operating project for sprinkler maintenance. This is actually a carryover from last year that was not able to be completed, as well as we do have a transfer to reserve in $100,000 as well. Well, the answer is not no, it's just against recommendation, that's all. So we'll move on to the pool. Again, the pool is in the same boat as the arena, where we're starting to kind of see those pre-COVID revenue levels kind of hit back, normalize again, which is great. We are seeing that Red Deer County contribution at $187,000. They do have some contracted services in the amount of $6,000, so those are the instructor costs. If they have to hire out like aquafit instructor, that comes out of that cost. And we do see a $100,000 transfer to reserve. This is a $50,000 increase this year. However, last year was $50,000, the year before that was $0. So we are trying to build that up to help build our reserves, so that's why we did increase that to $100,000 this year. We'll get into facilities. So this has the rentals and leases for the Kemp House Henday Association LLC, any of the meeting room rentals at the LLC, the curling rink, as well as the senior center lease. All the expenses for the LLC, as well utilities and security, come out of here. There is a transfer to reserve to the curling rink, or for the curling rink, in the amount of $10,000. One big thing happened here is there was a bunch of building repairs and maintenance that were reallocated to this budget. So they were not increased in those lines, it was just reallocated into one budget, and that will just give the facilities manager more opportunity to treat that, right? Like if we had $10,000 in this budget for this building, but something happened to the roof and it's $20,000, this will give them the freedom to make those repairs as needed, rather than being limited to the current budget, right? Because not every year, every building needs to be fixed and repaired, right? So this gives them the freedom to kind of do that. As well as the HIPPO, which is our building maintenance software, was moved to the admin budget, kind of in that same vein, right?
Sorry, just a quick question before we move on. We've had 2 requests from groups that reside in town facilities. So the chamber had asked earlier this year, and the library brought it up at their presentation. But sort of the maintenance, those maintenance requests for, paint or whatever, do those fall within the current, do we budget for those current maintenance situations?
It depends on the type of maintenance, right? If there's some small thing that needs to be fixed, then it would be covered in our standard annual operating building and repairs and maintenance. However, if it's a large project, it would have to be a capital project as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and the last department here is the library. There's really not a whole lot here on the library. We do see the Red Deer County contribution in just under $11,000. But the big thing is the grants to others, and $156,000 is going to the library. They did not request an increase this year, and $71,000 is going to Parkland Regional Library, and that includes the increases that were previously approved by council a couple months ago.
So when the library came, there were some maintenance issues, like they were suggesting painting the library. Has that come forward, or is that a surprise?
Well, so painting and things like that are part of a maintenance schedule, so they will be, addressed in accordance with those
Happens anyways, yeah.
schedules.
Okay, thanks.
Just one question. Is there an expectation at all with the remuneration policy that we're reviewing, that there will be a savings at all with the council costs?
There could be. Nothing has changed in the budget yet because that policy has not been approved yet. Likely, we would probably maintain that budget for this year and see how 1 year of the new updated policy before we make any significant changes. I would anticipate some decreases, but it would probably be minimal.
So kind of a generic question, which I usually ask. As we look at, tighter, looking at the budget, I assume we have some idea of projected surpluses this year. And I know they always usually go to general reserves or get allocated, but sometimes if there's an unusual one, we might consider that money's going to be there. Is there a feeling as to how tight we are? And
No, we haven't really made any of those kind of future projections. It is pretty hard to determine.
okay, have
My-
to ask.
I would, premature to say, but because we've tightened up a lot of the operations over the years, I believe those surpluses will be diminishing. That's my expectation. That's something unusual operational happens throughout the year. It's likely we'll be within that 300, I'm gonna guess, but it could be
Yeah.
in
No,
that range,
and
but
I
that's pretty skinny.
I totally appreciate that effort, because my first years, it was always 500 plus, and well, it was.
Less snow in November.
And snowing though
But
now.
more frost building up.
So we'll have a break for lunch, Director Vickers? and-
Absolutely.
So what I suggest, council, is break for lunch. We'll grab our lunch, we'll go to the back room and to see where we go with our conversation. We'll check in at 1 o'clock and go from there.
Are you losing half your office?
Yeah?
Are we done? Are we done?
Are you losing half your office?
Yeah, it's going to sacrifice for the betterment of the town.